What's going on? This is the Saturday Down South podcast. I am Connor O'Gara. Different plan for today because Will is not going to be on the pod this week. He's got spelling bee duties with his day job, so he is off doing a million other things right now. So I am flying solo today. I have teased this idea for a little bit on social media and decided, you know what? We're doing it. We're doing it today. Pre-2010 country songs to describe SEC teams heading into 2024. Very specific. One of one pod segment. That's what you come here for. The reason that I wanted to do pre-2010 country songs is because if you've been listening to this for a while, I've kind of explained my origins with country music as someone that grew up in the suburbs of Chicago and didn't necessarily get into it as much really until really 2010. So I decided, you know what? Let's broaden my horizons. Let's get a little bit uncomfortable. Let's go for songs that are before 2010. Okay. So we're talking about songs that hopefully people listening to this grew up with. And if you didn't, oh, well, that's perfectly fine. I think it still will probably force people to go down a little bit of a rabbit hole. And the way that we do this, we've done something like this each off season this will be the fourth time that we've done something similar to this. This is not just like, oh, hey, Darius Rucker is a big South Carolina fan, so I have to do a Darius Rucker song for South Carolina. There's no real creativity that comes with that. I think doing that sometimes is pretty easy, and I don't necessarily like just defaulting to that. So I would rather do it in a more creative way to be able to describe how I feel about specific teams and kind of where they're at right now and what kind of makes sense for them. So that's how we're going to go through this. I'm not saying that these are the best songs. I did pick all songs that I know and like. So, yeah, I didn't necessarily get crazy into the weeds and pretend like I am some expert on a song that came out in 1965 and pretend like I have some great history with it. I don't. Some of these songs are much more newer for me in the last few years, even though they've been around for a very long time. Because, like I said, my exposure to this came more so like 2010, the last 15 years. But all of these songs will be pre-2010 songs. As well, we are not doing any repeats of songs that we have done in the past with segments like this. So How Do You Like Me Now? That does not play. Use that to describe Arkansas a couple of years ago. We're not going for songs like that. Trying to be creative, trying to do songs that I have not necessarily done on here before. Also, one last caveat. One song per artist. Could do probably 6 or 7 different George Strait songs here. There were a ton of Brooks and Dunn songs that I could have done here. I thought about a lot of others that would have made just perfect sense, and I could have just given myself that out. But I'm like, nope, we're going to stick to the rule. We have one song per team, pre-2010 country songs to describe SEC teams heading into 2024. We're going in alphabetical order. Let's start with Alabama. Neon Moon by Brooks and Dunn. We're starting off with a bang. That's how we're doing it. I don't know what I would say if I were asked the question, what's the best country song of all time? I honestly don't think I'm well-versed enough, even as somebody that's a big fan of the genre. It's the primary genre of music I listen to. But I do know that there is a list of songs that I will not push back on if you tell me that is the greatest country song of all time, and this is one of them. This is the quintessential 90s country heartbreak song. It just is. Nick Saban retiring was always going to cause a bit of heartbreak for Alabama. We know that. But this song is about longing for those glory days. And perhaps Alabama could have some of that in its future. I think of two young lovers running wild and free. The pain hurts so much because those glory days were so good. There will always be a piece of Alabama's identity that is Nick Saban. And it's hurt inside of me ain't never going to end. Come on. It's never going to go away. It'll always be there, that element of, man, remember the Saban years? Even if DeBoer crushes it, that's going to be a piece of Alabama's identity as long as we are talking about this sport. However, I'll be all right as long as there's light from a neon moon. Kalen DeBoer is Alabama's neon moon. He can help heal that pain because he's darn good at this. He's one of the 5 best coaches in this sport. A dive bar doesn't replace losing your one and only, but it helps. Kalen DeBoer won't be Nick Saban, but him being an ideal successor, it helps. So Neon Moon for Alabama. Arkansas, Run by George Strait. This was the first one I thought of when doing this. Might have even prompted the entire segment if we're being 100% honest. As I've said many, many times, if my idea for TikTok of Y'all Said What ever launches, this is going to be the first song that I do. I promise you that. This works just on so many levels, but mainly it is how I picture Arkansas being able to pitch Bobby Petrino to come back. That's the entire motivation of this. A former lover, just come back by any means necessary. Find a way back to us. However you can, just come back and save us. That's all we're asking for. Also, maybe run the football just a little bit better than Danny Nose did. Not really saying a whole lot. Not to hate on George Strait. Not here to hate on King George. I promise you that. Okay. Love me some George Strait. He was probably top 2 or 3 of bucket list concerts that I haven't been to, and it might even be higher than that. But this song's lyrics are absolutely absurd. If you are this desperate to see someone, why is it that they have to jump through all of these hoops to be able to see you? Why can't you just change your schedule and be with them? Why can't you do that? I suppose it plays here because Arkansas isn't going anywhere. Like, technically, Bobby Petrino has to run to Arkansas, and it's probably Arkansas that's making a pitch of like, come to us, come back. Bobby Petrino is always going somewhere, on the other hand, so I think that works too. This song starts off pretty reasonably, I think. Man, misses woman, asks her to take a cab, don't you walk to me, chorus, second verse. That's where we really start getting into it here. Is he mansplaining to her how to drive a stick shift? Is that what was playing out here? If that's the case, should this really be the vehicle that she's operating at warp speed, just to get to you in one piece? I think that's the goal, is that she's going to get to you in one piece. More from the second verse. If you ain't got a suitcase, get a box or an old brown paper sack. To be clear, you believe this woman carrying her belongings in a brown paper sack, an old brown paper sack, is reasonable, is excusable. Okay? Like, she has all these things, but nowhere to put them. So getting a brown paper sack, an old one, that's going to do the trick. And you think packing it light or packing it heavy is an option. I am here to tell you, if you have an old brown paper sack, you're packing that thing light. Okay. Other part, take a truck. Take a Chevy. I'm sorry, George, or whoever is writing the song, or the subject of the person who wants to have this woman run to them. Did you just go from telling me to go round trip with an old brown paper sack with my belongings to trying to pick the specific type of truck that I should use to be able to embark on this beeline to get to you? Because that feels a little bit hypocritical. Last part. There's a shortcut to the highway out of town. Why don't you take it? Don't let that speed limit slow you down. Go on and break it. How about you stop backseat driving and just let me do my thing? All right. You're trying to convince this woman to break the law for you because you're so desperate, but not desperate enough to drop whatever you're doing that's so important. Yet you've got enough time to be able to control all these little aspects of her trip to be able to get to you. This makes zero sense, but desperate times call for desperate measures. Desperate times at Arkansas called for desperate measures of Mr. Neckbrace himself coming back, who probably should have avoided George's advice of leaning on the gas. Auburn, I'm in a Hurry by Alabama. One of the most relatable country songs ever. Probably the song that I personally relate to more than any other on this list. I'm in a hurry to get things done. I rush and rush until life's no fun. All I really got to do is live and die. Even I'm in a hurry and don't know why. Auburn's always in a hurry, perpetually in a hurry. Gus Malzahn's offense was in a hurry, as is Hugh Freeze's offense at times. But this is more about Auburn rushing to get on Alabama and Georgia's level. That's why Auburn gave Gus that mega extension post 2017 after, hey, you beat both of them. You deserve this money. Don't go to Arkansas. Stay here. And it's also why Gus was always on the hot seat, and he took home what was then the richest buyout ever paid to a head coach, $21.5 million. It's also why Auburn pulled the plug on the Brian Harsin era before he could finish his second season. Maybe it's also why Hugh Freeze fired both coordinators and took back play calling duties. Maybe he feels at times this offseason like maybe he's in a hurry. It just seems a little bit like he senses some of the urgency, and that's in some ways a good thing. But I wonder how that's going to play out. I really do. Auburn does hear that voice that it's running behind. It's Alabama fans every single year. Like, can Auburn fans go in public without seeing or hearing an Alabama fan saying, you're running behind? You actually are. Purely coincidental that I picked a smash hit by the band Alabama for Auburn. But definitely still plays for Auburn. I'm in a hurry. You're going to go listen to that right now. I know you are. Florida, Some Beach by Blake Shelton. A little bit later. We're getting a little bit closer to 2010, a song that I heard a lot of when I first started listening to country music. But this was probably the most difficult one for me to come up with, because I do think that the vibe of Florida is a bit more, how should I say, us against the world right now. Okay. Some Beach is relevant even up to this past week with the Jaden Rashada mess. Florida was having a great stretch in the portal, doing well in recruiting. DJ Lagway looked awesome in the spring game, and then boom, lawsuit against the head coach and a mega booster. Has that not been the vibe of Florida really for the vast majority of the post-Urban Meyer era, of this nice progression? Looks like things are going well. Oh, Dan Mullen is changing up his offense. You're doing different things at the quarterback position. Oh, look at this vintage Will Muschamp defense. Oh, Jim McElwain. This is why you get a former Nick Saban disciple to come in here and do these things. And look what they're doing in the East. They're already winning it consecutive years. And then, boom, just something happens. You're reminded that life's hard, and all you want to do is watch a beautiful sunset burning up the atmosphere. This past season was that third verse to a T. Florida sat in the waiting room at the dentist, seemed like all afternoon, looked like it was taking that year two step. Nothing out of the ordinary, kind of standard stuff. Knew that last part of the schedule would be tough, but hey, how bad could it be? You had a little bit of Novocaine in there. You've experienced pain. You know what that's going to be like. The college football gods started drilling before Florida was known. That's what happened. Just pure pain. The challenge for Florida is that it knows that beach exists. Palm trees are growing and warm breezes blowing. Florida fans are old enough to picture themselves right there on some beach somewhere. Georgia, You're Still the One by Shania Twain. Pretty obvious here. Not necessarily having to explain a whole lot of that. Georgia is in that love phase that is so unbelievably rare. Number one program, number one coach in the sport. It's wild to think that this will be Kirby's 9th season on the job, second longest tenured coach in the SEC behind only Mark Stoops. I mean, where has time gone? That is just an unreal thought to be able to process. Those things are all kind of obvious. You didn't need me to explain them for you. The first verse of that 1997 smash hit kind of says it all. Looks like we made it. Look how far we've come, my baby. Might have took the long way. We knew we'd get there someday. They said, I bet they'll never make it. But just look at us holding on. We're still together, still going strong. Those 1980 jokes played for a while. They really did. I mean, whoever you want, like if you're a Florida fan, if you're an Alabama fan, Tennessee fan, you got use out of those jokes. I mean, those jokes had some miles on them. Georgia might have took the long way. And yeah, plenty said that they'd never make it. But now, very much holding on to the top spot in the sport. The irony is that this song was written about her then husband. Well, at least he was, I shouldn't say it was written about him, but he was considered like the subject of this song that she came up, that Shania Twain just like kind of came up with, and was very much in that love phase of life. And her husband infamously later had an affair with one of Shania Twain's good friends, and they got divorced. And then Shania Twain got married to the man on the other end of that cheating scandal. So it was like a husband swap. Just wild the way that played out. Not sure how that really plays with Georgia. I don't think it does at this point. I can't even do the thing where I say like, oh, maybe that means that Kirby's going to end up at Alabama. No, not going to go there. We saw how that played out with Saban finally stepping down, but still the one for Georgia. It feels right, at least for now, just like it did with Shania Twain at the time. Kentucky, 9-5 by Dolly Parton. Remember how I said I'm in a hurry is one of the most relatable country songs ever written. This is too, very much. It feels especially relatable for Mark Stoops. Kentucky, blue collar program, wakes up, goes about its business by working hard, trying to develop, trying to get guys to the next level, trying to be able to take that 3-star recruit from Youngstown and turn him into an NFL player. It's a tale as old as time. Okay, we know the formula for Kentucky, and yeah, they've done some things in the NIL department to kind of show that they're with the times. It hasn't necessarily just been like, oh, we're not willing to do anything like that. We're so set in our ways. Nah, they work hard. They try and do whatever it takes to be able to move up the ranks. Great habits. Feel like, all right, you've set yourself up to be able to continue to grow and progress, but the boss won't seem to let me. I swear sometimes that man is out to get me. I mean, that's it right there. The boss is Kirby Smart, Josh Heupel, Alabama, or anybody else that has stood in Kentucky's way of breaking through and getting a promotion to the SEC championship for the first time. In the same boat with a lot of your friends, waiting for the day your ship will come in and the tide's going to turn and it's all going to roll your way. You think Mark Stoops has ever felt like that after getting waxed by Georgia and then getting up to the podium and telling fans to pony up to get better players? Dolly was right. It's a rich man's game, no matter what they call it. LSU, As Good As I Once Was by Toby Keith. Off the just legendary album title, Honky Tonk University. You can't listen to this song without singing along. And I will not sing it for you. That is not what we are here to do today. This is not a sing-along podcast. You do not want to hear my voice. I will not just make you want to unsubscribe to this podcast by lowering myself to do that. Okay, that's what YouTube is for. You can follow along there. But if you just read that title, As Good As I Once Was, you might think this is me insulting LSU, and I'm saying that LSU is past its prime, which I think you could apply this song to a team like that. If you wanted to say it's for Nebraska or for Miami or something, that's, I guess, fine. But if you know the song, you know that this song isn't about being a shell of your former self. I ain't as good as I once was, but I'm as good once as I ever was. Perfectly LSU. LSU is not going to be 2019 levels of good, perhaps not ever again. I don't know that any college football team will be as good as 2019 LSU. Brian Kelly might not ever have a team that's as good as that team or 2011, which will go down as one of the best to never win a title. This isn't expected, at least in 2024, to be 2007 or 2003, both of those teams who won national championships. There's a very realistic chance that we will all look at LSU's defense this year and go, you can't do this, boy. Very, very much going to be the case. At least early indications are that. But this is a song about being able to still rise to the occasion when challenged. That's what it's all about. LSU, in any given year with Brian Kelly, has the ability to rise to the occasion and fight one great big fat biker man. That is always possible for this version of LSU, even though it might not be at peak levels. LSU can still throw a few back, talk a little smack when it's feeling bulletproof. We're not talking about LSU being at its prime, but with Kelly, it's perhaps at a more stable place than it's been in a long, long time. And maybe you have that wily veteran perspective, and that every once in a while comes in handy when you get, in a tight spot or two. Mizzou, Great Day to Be Alive by Travis Tritt. You know the song. And if you don't, you will the second you put it on. You know you're in a good mood when even the thought of rice cooking in the microwave gets you hype. That's Mizzou right now. That is Mizzou football. On the heels of an 11-win season with the most electric player in the sport coming back, Luther Burden, you've got a $250 million stadium renovation in the works. You've got the 12-team playoff era here at a great time. It is a great day to be alive for Mizzou football. If I wanted to say it was because Kirby Moore did all the heavy lifting as the play caller, I would say it's neither drink nor drug induced. A little wordplay there. I'll show myself out. Mizzou should be loving life right now. Really should. It isn't celebrating how it has the finer things in life. It's not about, oh, we've got all this 5-star talent. It's not Georgia. It's not Alabama. It's not living in this mansion and, eating the finest foods that money can buy or anything like that. It's feeling good because it has experienced pain. It knows what that pain and frustration is like. There's some hard times in the neighborhood, but why can't every day be just this good? And I know what you're thinking. What's the equivalent of Mizzou debating if it should grow a Fu Manchu? I think it's maybe just talking about Luther Burden being at Wildcat. Like, hey, we're going to get him some snaps, like 2 or 3 snaps a game at Wildcat quarterback. That's Mizzou growing out of Fu Manchu, or at least considering it. Because why not? Life is good. Mississippi State, Good Time by Alan Jackson. Apologies if I've told this story before. I might have once, but it's worth repeating again, or at least I think it is. The year was 2014. I was a sports reporter, Kearney, Nebraska. It was actually Friday, May 3rd, 2014. How do I know that specific date? Because it was my 24th birthday. On Friday night, in the local newspaper business, it's very, very big for sports. It's not quite as big that time of year in spring, but it's always kind of big Friday night in sports. When you are covering the high school level, there's just always something going on. That night, for whatever reason, just happened to not be as big. It was kind of the calm before the storm of like state sports and stuff like that. I didn't have anything big to do that night besides page designing duties, which takes some time, but it's not the same as being at a game and covering it. So that night, I get into the office around 6 o'clock, and I promise I have a purpose to this story. I do. I get into the office at like 6 o'clock that night. Our photographer is also there, and he's about to go head off to an Alan Jackson concert that is just down the street from our Kearney Hub offices there in downtown Kearney. And he says, hey, we've got an extra ticket because our other photographer couldn't go. And so my boss, shout out Buck Mahoney, legend of the game, he looks at me and says, go to the concert. And I'm like, really? I'm not going to put you kind of in a tough spot. Buck was our sports editor, but he's worked many of those nights alone. That just kind of comes with the territory of having a small newspaper staff. But I didn't want to just be like, oh yeah, I'm just going to bail on you on a Friday night and just assume that I can go to this thing. But they're like, no, you should go to this. Go enjoy yourself. So I went solo. I went solo to an Alan Jackson concert. I was there front row. It was one of the best concerts I have ever been to. You could say that I was working all week. I wanted to have fun, and it was time for a good time. It was, very much. Mississippi State, I don't know that it'll be out there for anything more than a good time this year. I honestly think the goal for Mississippi State and for Jeff Lebby in year one should just be to show that Mississippi State can have a good time. You know what I mean? Like just show that Mississippi State can be a fun program, especially when you know what's happening right now over in Oxford. You know the entire pitch that Lane Kiffin has had, the party and the sip, that whole mantra that Ole Miss is the fun program. And last year, Mississippi State was nothing close to fun. I don't know at what point last year Mississippi State was having fun, but those moments were few and far between. I honestly think that's kind of what led to them pulling the plug on Zach Arnett so quickly, was realizing, oh man, we're not fun, and we know we're not fun, and we don't really have the path to become a fun, entertaining program in ways that, look, I think to a different audience, probably more so during the Dan Mullen era, Mississippi State was very fun. And I think they would like to be able to get back to that. Of course, under Mike Leach, it was fun in a different sort of way as well. And I think at the core of who Mississippi State is, it is a program that can have a good time and can be that team that, man, you get the cowbells rocking and you just kind of never know, that type of atmosphere, and put up some points and do what you can with guys that are not necessarily going to be top 100 recruits necessarily. So I think that's the goal for Jeff Lebby year one. Air it out, have some highlight reel plays, maybe pull off a fun upset or two. head to head off to that Waffle House way across town, here for a good time. All right, Oklahoma. Lesson in Leaving by Joe Messina. Great song. If you told me that this song was recorded after Joe Messina hopped in a time machine, saw Oklahoma in a post-Lincoln Riley world, and then went back to 1998, I would believe you. I would say time travel exists. This is confirmation of that. Listen to these lyrics and tell me that I'm wrong. Somebody's going to give you a lesson in leaving. Somebody's going to give you back what you've been given. And I hope that I'm around to watch him knock you down. It's like you to love him and leave him, just like you loved me and left me. It's like you to do that sort of thing over and over again. You're a foolhardy man. This song is an absolute banger. It is. I mean, Joe Messina is fantastic. And I've been listening to a lot more Joe Messina over the course of the last probably 5-6 months. And just has so many hits. And I definitely have underestimated her during my time listening to country music. This song isn't heartbreak. This song is actively rooting for your ex's downfall. It's a beautiful thing. It really is. It's Marler who always says, you got hate in your heart, let it out. That's Oklahoma with Lincoln Riley. It still is. And you could say rent free, whatever. No, I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with that. I think so few proud college football programs experience a breakup like this that, look, you have no choice but to feel this way. And Oklahoma fans, I'm not making fun of you. I am not making fun of you. Look, you're joining a conference that specializes in pettiness. This is what the SEC does. If anything, having that approach makes Oklahoma more SEC than ever. You think Tennessee fans got over Lane Kiffin leaving for USC? No. They waited 12 years for him to come back to Knoxville as a head coach, and they still tried to hit him with mustard bottles and golf balls. Maybe that was directed at the officiating, whatever. The point is that they had the mustard bottles ready to throw at Lane. They were there. If you want to call Lincoln Riley a foolhardy man for the next 12 years, I have no problem with that whatsoever. Yeah, he deserves a lesson in leaving. Ole Miss, speaking of Lane, Friends in Low Places by Garth Brooks. Tell me you can't close your eyes and picture Lane Kiffin belting out some Friends in Low Places. There is a 100% chance that he has belted this out before, because we have all belted this out before. Final song at our wedding, ironically enough. The vibe of Ole Miss this year is that it's ready to crash the party, the playoff party. This is the greatest party crashing song of all time. Lane, as we know, not big on social graces. He's big on having sideline basketball hoops for post-touchdown dunk celebrations. If Ole Miss isn't playoff bound this year, this might actually be an even more appropriate song. I can picture all the playoff teams having some sort of, fancy banquet or something like that. Coaches are all there, full suit, stuff like that. It's a very cordial event. And then Lane just strolls in. He's got a fresh tan after, he spent all day deep sea fishing. He's got his hair disheveled, like he did the thing where he hops out of the shower and just takes the towel and rubs his head as hard as he possibly can to get his hair dry. And he's like, yeah, that's good enough, whatever. Everyone sees Lane walk in and they're like, wait a minute, what's he doing here? Lane wasn't invited to this. Lane takes the microphone and just turns it into a roast of every coach in attendance. Lane has successfully ruined the black tie affair. South Carolina. I Hope You Dance by Leanne Womack. I believe that South Carolina fans that's the wrong word. I believe that South Carolina fans hope Shane Beamer can be the guy. They want him to find a way and dance, because as we saw during some of those moments, 2021, 2022, when they're pulling off these upsets, man, South Carolina is the place to be. And when it's right, it is really, really fun. And even when it's not right, South Carolina still has an unbelievable atmosphere at Williams-Brice. The key word there is hope. That song is written like a parent trying to guide their child, right? You might actually think the connection that I'm going to make here is Frank Beamer trying to guide his son on this path that he followed his dad's footsteps in. He's like trying to guide his son. I could actually picture more so Shane's mom, Cheryl, as being the person, the voice behind this song. Not just because it's a woman, but just because she was the one who was kind of, there at every turn during Shane's upbringing. If you kind of know that story, She's the one that's calling him, within 5 minutes after every game as a head coach. She's the one who was there to kind of steer him on that path growing up. She would drive him all over Virginia to different sporting events and stuff like that, because obviously Frank had a very high profile job coaching Virginia Tech football and whatnot. But Shane is someone who, like, look, is probably still getting guidance like that from his parents, who are extremely successful people and have done great things with their lives. This song is all about guiding someone and hoping that they continue to make the right choices, which it feels like that has been a constant, well-documented issue during Beamer's time. And I'm not saying for good or bad, but just what are the choices that he's going to make? Oh, this isn't someone that's a play caller. It comes down to those choices, those personnel choices, those quarterback decisions. What's it going to look like year to year? How do you approach all these different things? When do you pull the trigger on a fake punt? When do you go all in on getting someone like Spencer Rattler in the portal? When do you not worry about Nebraska poaching Marcus Satterfield? Things like this. Beamer's time at South Carolina has felt a bit like a ballad, much like this song. And yeah, maybe it's a little bit cheesy at times, but you can see how much it means. This song always means a lot. It feels like it's done at some sort of important function or something like that. And South Carolina, the direction it's hoping to go in, again, keyword hope there, this kind of makes sense for Shane Beamer and the direction of the program entering 2024. Tennessee, something to be proud of by Montgomery Gentry. Montgomery Gentry is incredibly underrated, and it's so sad that Troy Gentry was lost in that helicopter crash 2017. Just terrible type of story. I remember seeing that at the time going, dang, man, like that was like one of my favorite first bands in country that I got into. One of my favorite country songs after I started listening to country was My Town. And I had this Data CD that had like 115 tracks on it. I remember my buddy burned it when we were driving from Bloomington to Charlotte for spring break. And one of my other buddies was like, yeah, don't put any country on this. Like, I'm not really a country fan. And both he and my other buddy and I, we were kind of like just getting into it at the time. He's like, oh yeah, we won't put any country on it whatsoever. And then I think it was like 75% country. My one buddy has since been reformed and is now a diehard country fan, ironically enough. But this was one of those songs that was on it. And I used to listen to this CD when I would drive my 98 Corolla from Bloomington to Indianapolis, summer 2011, when I interned with the Indianapolis Indians. And this song prompted me to want to listen to more Montgomery Gentry. And it's just an unbelievably talented duo, or at least it was, I should say. One of my favorite songs ever is Roll With Me. I listened to that song today and I'm like getting choked up thinking about it. It's just so well done. The harmonizing on that last chorus is chef's kiss. It's just, it's beautiful. But yeah, that brings us to something to be proud of. There's a story that my daddy tells religiously, Tennessee fans talking about 98, like clockwork every time he sees an opening. Again, Tennessee fans love talking about 98. In a conversation about the way that things used to be, like how they used to be in 98, well, I would just roll my eyes and make a beeline for the door, but I'd always end up starry-eyed, cross-legged on the floor, hanging on to every word. Man, the things I heard, like T. Martin, the Clint Sterner fumble, like you get it. You get all the stumble, I should say. You understand all these things. Tennessee, finally, for the first time, really post-Fulmer era, has something to be proud of. It doesn't have a coach that's clueless and lacking self-awareness like Jeremy Pruitt, like Butch Jones. It has someone who can actually scheme and who wants to be there. Tennessee has real expectations on a yearly basis to be one of the SEC's best teams, and we're not making fun of it. At least I don't think we should be at this point. I think the floor is incredibly high, and that's a testament to the job that Josh Heupel has done so far. It did so without necessarily catching lightning in a bottle. This isn't just like, oh, they got one player and we're kind of waiting to see how this is going to be with some superstar quarterback, after it played out with him. And I guess you could apply some of that to Hendon Hooker, but I think there are enough other pieces to this that make you want to say, all right, there is promise to be had here in what Josh Heupel has built in a very short time with what was an incredibly difficult rebuild that he did in a hurry. Transfer portal definitely helped with that. But he developed a scheme. He recruited to that scheme, found a defensive identity, something I didn't think was going to be possible. And now I think that Tennessee has more of an established identity than any point probably in the post-Fulmer era. Even if that doesn't mean winning a bunch of titles, it's more about just being relevant on a yearly basis. And in my opinion, that is something to be proud of. Texas. Cowboy, take me away by the Chicks. This isn't really the forum to discuss the ins and outs of the Chicks versus country music radio clash, the Chicks versus Toby Keith, that clash. So if you can kind of put that aside for this discussion, Cowboy Take Me Away is about that early love feeling. It's that feeling of being swept off your feet. Texas had been searching for its Cowboy for a decade. Just someone who could take them out of their misery, much closer to heaven than whatever place they were at. I wouldn't say it was hell, but Texas wasn't in an ideal place, really late days of the Mac Brown era and then early days post Mac Brown. Really, since they walked off the field, 2009, end of that season, national championship against Alabama. Sark is Texas's Cowboy. He is their chance for love. A coach who Texas can hope at least that he's going to take him to new heights that sound like a fantasy. On a pillow of blue bonnets in a blanket made of stars, it sounds good to me. Texas has been set free of its embarrassing ways. It has been taken into a world that is so much more satisfying than the one that it left. This is the place that Texas has been dreaming about being in for a long, long time. A place that didn't even sound realistic when Texas was joining the SEC or when it was announced back in summer of 21, in which we're like, man, what's Texas going to be? This is new coach coming in. This is still going to be a difficult uphill climb for him. And who knows, maybe tougher times are ahead. But starting off as one of the three favorites to win a national championship on the heels of a playoff berth, there's a reason why you have changed the conversation, Steve Sarkisian. You are the Cowboy that is taking Texas out of that place. I debated several different songs for the Chicks. Lots could have played. Wide Open Spaces, one that has been talked about a lot. Definitely think that plays for Ole Miss. Some of these teams with better offenses that would have made a lot of sense for. But I went with this song. And did I pick this song because, Texas against Mr. Oklahoma, late Toby Keith? Did I make that connection? Maybe I did. Maybe I didn't. It plays. Texas A&M. Dust on the Bottle. David Lee Murphy. Timeless song. Timeless song. One of those songs that still gets played a lot on country radio as well. That's when you've got a banger, when you've got a 90s country song that actually still gets played on country radio. The only reason I chose this for A&M is because I think, contrary to what Jimbo Fisher was presented with back in 2018, I don't think it's a fake future national championship plaque that all of these Aggies have ready to bust out if A&M does indeed, win its first national title since 1939. I don't think they're going to go to their local trophy store and say, all right, fill it in now. I don't really think that's the way that A&M operates. Let's not let the mistake of one define the ambitions of many. The ambition is wealth, it's status, it's being able to have a program that runs the sport. That is what A&M is still after. I picture a wealthy A&M booster with a corner office, maybe downtown Dallas, and he's got a liquor cabinet full of top shelf bottles. But there's one in there that he bought decades ago. He's been saving it for that moment, that A&M national championship. It's the bottle that he will bust out when his coworkers who went to Texas or SMU or Texas Tech, they come into his office. He's going to bust out that bottle. He's going to pop the top. He's going to get a few of these glasses out and go, men, I've been waiting to bust this out for as long as I can remember. Today, we drink from it. Gig 'em. I think there are countless Aggies who have rehearsed that exact moment. And they cut checks for things like NIL and $76 million buyouts because that's all they want. They just want to celebrate their school finally did it. and they want to rub it in the faces of all the other Texas alums and boosters, and they want to do it with the best bottle that money can buy. That's the dream. It's just one of those things that gets sweeter with time. All right, Vanderbilt, let's end it with The Doors, Watching Airplanes by Gary Allan. Gary Allan is so good. So maybe this isn't right to put him with Vandy. I kind of feel bad doing that. There's a feeling of helplessness in this song. Take off, or I'm just sitting out here watching airplanes take off and fly, trying to figure out which one you might be on. That's desperation. That's what that is. I know I'm in the right place, but I have no real path to get what I want. Vandy is in the right place in the SEC, but it has no real path to get what it wants. And to be fair, football glory is not what Vandy has wanted, at least not in the SEC sense. While everyone in the SEC bought into the arms race, Vandy did not care that it hadn't had a major stadium upgrade renovation in 3 decades. It was like, yeah, whatever. SEC teams have essentially been taking off and flying 30,000 feet above Vandy for a very, very long time. Forget stopping one of those planes. Vandy isn't even at the airport. It's on the other side of the fence, on the hood of this truck, looking up. You could say that Vandy could have lied, could have cried, should have tried harder, but now it's just sitting out here watching SEC airplanes. All right, that was fun. Glad we got to do that. A lot of work. A lot of work spent on Friday afternoon. Actually, I lied. Okay. I've been coming up with this list for a month, probably. Taking a bit of my mental capacity to be able to come up with this and try and come up with a song that applies, I think, for each one of these programs. But love being able to do at least one thing like that during the off season. And I get it. If you're not a country music fan, no worries. This is why we do content like this in May. It's fun for me to be able to dig into stuff like that as well. All right, let's take a quick word to talk about our Saturday Down South YouTube channel. Are you subscribed to the Saturday Down South YouTube channel? You should be. I'm very, very biased, but you should be subscribed to the Saturday Down South YouTube channel to get all of our great content available in video form. I know you're one of those people that's like, you know what? I'm not really a podcast on YouTube person. That's perfectly fine. I get it. We also have clips. If you're one of those people that's like, I actually like YouTube shorts more than just watching a full YouTube podcast, we have that available for you. We're cutting up all sorts of clips from our interviews, our main segments, and everything in between. We have our individual interviews are there as well. Just tons and tons of content on the Saturday Down South YouTube channel. You should go subscribe to that right now. Lad of the week, Bill Walton, rest in peace, the legend. Just gutting news on Memorial Day to hear that an icon left this world at age 71. Just one of those people that you kind of thought would live forever and we would just be hearing about for such a long time. And we did with Bill Walton. And that's the beautiful thing about it. But just one of those things that, man, it felt like it was a great day to actually be on social media to get all those different Bill Walton stories. Probably too many, even for me as someone who wanted to just consume as many as possible. When I saw that news, too many for me to be able to dig into. I do remember when we had Dave Pasch on a few years ago, and Pasch, of course, worked so many NBA and college games with him, more so on the college side in the Pac-12. And I actually just wanted to talk Bill Walton stories with Dave Pasch the entire time, but instead, he had just called the A&M spring game and wanted to get his take on calling games with Urban Meyer during his kind of gap year that he had in between Florida and Ohio State. So we talked about that, but I really listened to the last like 10 minutes of that interview, and it's just all Bill Walton stuff, because how could you not? I mean, it's just so unique that we get a person like that who is in the spotlight as long as he was. And I mean, you could just go back and watch some of the clips. Dave Pasch retelling the cupcake story is just so great. Of the time where Bill Walton would show up with these gifts and he would bring like a random tree or a stone just so that he could drop this one liner in the middle of a broadcast. I mean, it's the type of person that few people have the right words to be able to describe. And certainly I don't have the right words sitting here today, but everybody who consumed anything Bill Walton knows he just never took himself too seriously. And he epitomized that in so many ways. And it's a phrase that I think gets thrown around too much. In my opinion, we should probably do the opposite of that person actually takes themselves too seriously. Bill Walton was just the 0.0000001% of people that you would just love to be able to talk about life with. And I guess I should probably do the flip and say 99.99999%. You get what I'm saying. It feels like he lived his life on borrowed time. If you watch The Luckiest Guy in the World, the 30 for 30 on him, you kind of saw why Bill Walton was Bill Walton, why he was this free-spirited, Grateful Dead loving, just unbelievably unique human being to grace this earth. And how crazy is it to think that the man who coined the phrase Conference of Champions for the Pac-12, he dies 2 days after the conference has its final event ever. I mean, that's just the type of stuff that is truly wild. I mean, really think about that. That man was the Pac-12 through and through. So I suppose it's only fitting that the Pac-12 is no longer here with us, and neither is Bill Walton. But of course, his legacy will live on for a very, very long time. Just pure joy in ways that so few human beings get to be ever for a moment, and much less for a lifetime. Just rest in peace to a legend who truly believed that he was the luckiest guy in the world. All right, that'll do it. I know a little bit of a shorter episode. We're going to have, I think, some takeaways from the SEC spring meetings that we will be able to break down later in the week. Like I said earlier, it will be another solo pod with your boy. We'll have another interview as well. A couple of those that I'm working on right now. So we will have a full pod later in the week as well. If you have not, leave us a 5-star review, subscribe to our YouTube channel, as I was just saying, where you can watch every single episode of the Saturday Down South podcast. Follow us on Twitter at the STS Pod, at Set Down South, at CJ O'Gara, at Go So Hard. Thanks, guys. Talk soon.